Sekiro Shadows Die Twice at once feels instantly familiar and intuitive, but has enough fresh concepts and gameplay mechanics to feel like a new game. Especially when some of those mechanics and settings are reminiscent of another series FromSoft dipped its toes into, Tenchu. While there are certain aspects of the game to take issue with, Sekiro feels like the perfect love child of Tenchu and Souls, and that's a pretty decent pedigree. As is tradition for Brendan reviewing FromSoft games, there won't be much delving into the story. Half the fun of these games is jumping in blind and piecing the lore and plot together through item descriptions and cryptic conversations with NPCs. There is a curse haunting the land of a pseudo-realistic mythical Japan. You play as a shinobi named Wolf, and apparently you're the only one who could stop it. Also, you might get your arm chopped off and replaced with a customizable, upgradable prosthetic, with all sorts of nifty attachments. But more on that later.
命を賭して守る。たとえ奪われるとも必ず取り戻すのだ。良いなら、狼よ。
Let's talk about what's new and what returns in regards to the meat of the gameplay mechanics and how they compare to previous FromSoft games. First things first, everyone will play as the same character and progress more or less in the same way. There is no character customization. It's unclear how to feel about this when it comes to replayability factor, something previous FromSoft games are famous for. On top of this, there is no multiplayer aspect, yet anyway, so you won't have to worry about being invaded by gangs of red phantoms out for blood. But neither are you able to summon for help against particularly tough bosses. This is a streamlined, linear experience when compared to the Souls series, and this may not be exactly what longtime fans are expecting, but with the bad comes the good, and more. Bonfires are still a thing, now in the form of shrines that allow fast travel between any checkpoint at any time. Resting at these shrines allows the player to spend experience and cash on items and skill upgrades, and will reset the enemies in the area, as is tradition. The world is large and connected, with plenty of optional routes and shortcuts to be opened. You will also die a lot, with a darkening screen and the oh so familiar red message that lets you know that you've died. So there's always that old sense of companionship. What this basically means is that there are enough familiar elements that allow an almost instantly intuitive experience for anyone who has played the other games, but it comes with a whole set of new juicy mechanics to really give Sekiro its own identity. Verticality, stealth, and a lack of a stamina bar. These three things are the biggest changes to a classic formula. Early on in the game, players receive the Shinobi Prosthetic Arm, the crux of combat and traversal in Sekiro. This instantly gives players a retractable grappling hook, just like in Tenchu, that really opens up the levels and adds some much needed depth and layering to a recipe that has been traditionally two-dimensional in regards to traversal and combat. The addition of this expansion to the movement options for players cannot be understated. It adds a sorely needed interactivity with the environment, which is shocking that it hasn't been done before in Souls games, especially when combined with the second big change, stealth. The Wolf, our protagonist, is a shinobi, which means sneaking around and killing enemies from the shadows. He can enter into stealth mode, which when combined with certain upgrades, allows him to essentially move to and fro undetected, easily dispatching enemies that would prove far more challenging in a fair fight. This is hugely important because many mini-bosses are surrounded by goons, and facing them all head-on while some giant ogre is swinging a scimitar at you makes things much more difficult. Getting that first undetected death blow in can make or break a difficult fight. It's also simply fun to skulk around, throwing powdery shards as distractions and luring guards away from their post into dark rooms full of hidden katanas. And of course, if you get busted, most times you can use that handy grappling hook to shoot back onto a roof and wait for things to calm down. Finally, the actual combat itself is again instantly familiar and fluid, but innovative and markedly different than the tried and true methods of block, dodge, parry, attack. Combat in Sekiro is primarily focused on posture and vitality. Posture is essentially a blocking stamina meter, and when drained will open up the enemy for a death blow, which will kill low-level enemies instantly and take a health orb from a boss. They usually have two. If you choose to take a more agile approach, timing your parries perfectly to the enemy's attack will also open them up for a death blow, making the fight go a lot faster. There are various combinations of attacking, dodging, and parrying, and the regenerating posture bar doesn't allow for a slow and tactical approach. This takes the Bloodborne approach of speeding up combat and encouraging aggression to the next level. You need to be on your toes during combat, and constantly juggling attacks and parries. If you wait too long to launch an attack or defend yourself, the fight goes back to the beginning in a sense. It's fluid, tight, and addictive, which is what we've come to expect from the developer, and feels at home for any Souls vet, but provides a new and extremely challenging set of mechanics to master. The final and arguably biggest new mechanic offered in Sekiro is the resurrection ability. When the wolf dies in combat, he will be able to resurrect himself instantly at lower health and continue the battle. This can be extremely clutch in the final moments of a difficult boss fight, but it comes with a cost. The more often the wolf uses this ability, residents of the land will become sick with dragon rot. This can be cured with certain rare items later in the game, but it will always return and increase with every death or resurrection. Keeping that balance is key to fighting the rot, but it can be very tempting to keep resurrecting after every frustrating death. There are certain things Brennan expected from Sekiro that aren't on offer: weapon and gear variety, and build diversity primarily, and he feels that may harm the longevity of the game, more so when combined with the, so far, lack of multiplayer. Of course, it's the very early stages, and FromSoft games don't reveal their true depth right away. Rather than focus on what's lacking though, it's important to focus on the tremendously addictive and fluid action game that is here on the surface, and applaud FromSoft from finally, albeit still sort of reluctantly on some part, breaking away from the Souls franchise and its multiple entries of acquired mechanics and tropes. It's still a FromSoft game, and it feels like one, from the familiar fonts and dialogue to fast travel options and epic boss fights, but it's both fresh and familiar, and still as challenging and mysterious as its predecessors. Sekiro brings a lot of new ideas to the table, while maintaining enough comfortable staples to create an experience both fresh and familiar. Sekiro Shadows Die Twice gets a 9 out of 10.